Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Saturday from us at GunjurBIZ and Gunjur Online. I hope you all had a great Saturday. And also a nice weekend that was on Tabasco. Unfortunately, a lot of us had to do it COVID style, obviously. Many people didn't even have the opportunity to celebrate more of it. So, but it's all good. I'm hoping that everyone had a great barbecue and, things worked pretty nice. And as a result, we weren't able to do our usual program every Saturday, GunjurBIZ. And today we're here to, cover that ground that we lost last Saturday. But obviously, for obvious reasons, we know most of our followers were celebrating Eid, and even though most of us couldn't go to the masjid to do the prayers, but we all gathered with the family, spent good time with them, recalled back the memories. And as a result, we welcome back our guest, who is not a stranger to anyone, one of our champions back home in Gunjur that championed the cause of business and has been a very, very instrumental figure in establishing different things from youth sports and now into business. That's no other person than my able brother, Mr. Lamin Kere Janneh. Once again, welcome back on GunjurBIZ.
Thank you, Abubacarr. I hope, as you said, everyone had a very good Eid. Although this year is Eid in a different style, with the COVID situation that is confronting all of us at the moment. That's given us the opportunity to be able to still celebrate Eid, but of course in a different way. That unfortunately meant last week, as you rightly said, we couldn't do the program, but we're scheduled to this week. So just to say thank you very much to Gunjur News Online for availing us this opportunity to be on the platform once again, to share ideas and learn from each other about business opportunities. Thank you, Abubacarr.
Thank you. And hey, everyone out there, I hope you're following and thanks for following. Just go and subscribe to our YouTube channels and to our YouTube channel and our Facebook. Just share them as much as you could. So what the things that we're discussing here can be, on record and can also benefit more people. We all using this time that we have away, some are away from their families and some are away from their businesses, that we can use this time to sensitize people, to talk to people and bring in resourceful people that have been in this environment to share their ideas with us. And also we hope that they can be a good role model for a lot of young folks out there. And today, everywhere you watch is about COVID, right? People talk about COVID, hospitals are complaining about lack of capacity, lack of testing, how it affects people. Currently, we've seen a lot of people in the Gambia that have been affected directly. Many were skeptical about the truthfulness of the existence of COVID, and which is sad. But now a lot of people being hit hard. They've seen a bunch of photos, videos about people being taken to burial sites by Red Cross Society, and the hospitals are pretty much begging people to stay at home. If you looked at all that, there is some form of business aspect of that. especially places like Gambia, where you have people consuming things that are bought every day, meaning they don't have money to cover for 1 week of grocery shopping. Many of us have that luxury. You have people that go and work, make money, go to the market, buy stuff for the family, and cook it. So if you looked at that, every pandemic or whatever happens in the world has a business aspect of it. And most of us, because of availability of data, we rely more on the airlines, on the huge multinational companies that are filing foreclosures, I mean, houses foreclosures, people, the multinational companies that are filing for bankruptcy, they're laying off thousands and thousands of employees on a daily basis. Many of us are focused more on those because there is data available to back up all this. But what we fail to also bring on board is how we bring in our small businesses, our local businesses, especially in the developing countries that are hugely affected by all what it is happening in the world. Gambia, unfortunately, has an economy that is based on tax. And most of these taxes are income taxes. And most of these taxes are also collected from vendors at different markets, from shopkeepers, from activities that are happening in our economy that keeps the government running. If you looked at that, all that's going to stop. So the revenue from that is generated by the government that will be used to put back into our society, into our communities, or into the infrastructure are going to be really sliced down, and we're going to be, you know, we're going to continue to be indebted to the donors, also to a bunch of things that are happening in our country that needs refinancing. So that's why we think it is very, very important to bring up a program that is called Surviving COVID-19 as a Business. Businesses are struggling, businesses are laying off, small businesses are struggling. All of us are struggling. Many of us are struggling as a business, as an individual, because if you looked at it, we don't produce enough for our consumption locally. We rely heavily on the international markets, producers to supply our markets and our demand. So that's why we brought up this topic. So, Mr. Janneh, my first question would be, what do you think are the impacts of COVID to our small businesses and even by extension, medium-sized businesses that are operating in the Gambia? Because most of these things can be assessed easily if it is a bigger corporation that obviously have the data. You can, just by a click of a finger, you can know how many staff they lay off, what is the loss in terms of revenue, in terms of production, what are the losses and everything. But in terms of our locally owned businesses, what is the
Yeah.
impact of it?
Good question, Abubacarr. I think with COVID, unfortunately, is a situation that we've never experienced before. And I will take an example from the perspective of the Western world, and I'll narrow it down to the third world, Gambia. Even economies here and businesses here, we all know around the world are struggling. It's just because the resilience is not there, and businesses have never been built to expect something of this magnitude to happen. That's going to hit all of us. Now, I operate from the travel and tourism sector in Gambia. That's what my business is all about. But of course, this business is relying on tourists coming to Gambia. So directly, the impact that we have is there for everyone to see, because incoming flights to Gambia that are bringing tourists. Mainly Gambia's tourists are coming from the UK. A lot of them are from the UK. I mean, if you look at all the countries as well where our tourists are coming from, if you put it to a percentage time, you would see that a majority of the tourists that visit the Gambia are from the UK and perhaps Scandinavia. Now, these countries have already got restrictions for travel to Gambia. So that means a lot of these tourists that usually would come to Gambia are not going to come to Gambia now. So as a business that relies on tourists coming to your country for your survival, if the tourists are not there, what do you do? Does that mean you're going to shut the business down? And this is the challenge that is faced by a lot of businesses in the hospitality industry. And to give you a little bit of a stats on, the contribution of this industry to the Gambian economy, 20% of Gambia's GDP comes from hospitality industry. So that's significant. That in itself is a huge number, is a huge contributor. We're talking about over 42,000 employees, so people that directly benefit from this industry. Now, I'm looking at the small to medium businesses. Of course, we are small businesses because a lot of these eco businesses are smaller businesses. But if you go to the larger ones, a lot of the big hotels in Gambia at the moment close their doors. There's no business going on in there. So a lot of our brothers and sisters have been laid off work. And these people that are laid off have got families and they got relatives, they got children and people that depend solely on them for their survival. So how do we tackle this problem as a nation? Because, yes, a small business owner, you're dealing with a small business. That is something that can be manageable. For example, from the point of view of my business, Dalaba Eco Lodge, our staffing numbers are not that many. So these small numbers can be managed. I can take the heat on that and keep things going to allow my staff to come to work and give them something different, which is what I have been doing, giving them something different that they can do. The business is not open to the public, but we're still allowing members of staff to come in and we treat them like family to operate. But in a larger business, bigger hotels and bigger businesses in Gambia, it is a big struggle. And I think, something that I would believe the government would have to do something about to try and save these businesses from going under, because otherwise we are going to see a lot of businesses going out of business in itself.
Yeah, because me and you talked about this, a lot, and we actually talk about how businesses are affected. And in the Western world, it's a norm that when businesses are struggling, the government steps in. That's why we hear about rescuing businesses. We hear about stimulus packages that are there for smaller businesses, and even the bigger corporations are going for it so that they make money and that they can use that money to actually pump into their business so that to keep things afloat and to also avoid laying off businesses. But this has never happened in the Gambia. I've never heard of the government rescuing businesses, especially small businesses. I heard when the COVID hit, there was money, and the taxi drivers or commercial drivers were asked not to, run at a full capacity. They were, limited to certain amount of passengers that they could get into their vehicle for transportation, and they weren't getting compensated for that. That's something that is, not sustainable. And a lot of people were complaining about that. I'm not sure if later on they were able to get their compensations, but then eventually we didn't hear anything about that anymore. That limitation, which is
it's typical Gambian situation. I mean, everything that comes in, people think you politicize it and it becomes political. That's not the case. It's real. Politics is real as well. I mean, it can be honest, and it's down to Gambians being actually realistic and be honest with ourselves. I mean, a lot of the measures that are being taken in Gambia, I think they mirror the Western countries, but they're not putting in place the mechanism to support these measures that they are putting in place. Now, you look at, you mentioned about, taxi drivers and asking them to cut the numbers and everything like that. I've got friends here in the UK that are doing taxi driving business. And, when COVID hit hard, a lot of these drivers, weren't able to do their normal, businesses, and incomes were affected. So in the UK here, the banks were asked to give people as much up to £50,000 loan. These loans are conditional loans, but they, of course, designed them in such a way that they wouldn't necessarily attach stringent conditions to them that would force or disqualify people whose credit records are not very good to be able to have access to this facility. Now, the banks were told by the government that any small business that apply for these loans up to 50,000 should be given the loan, even if they don't meet the credit criteria or lending criteria that they normally use stringently to obviously ensure that you are able to have the ability to pay back this loan. So the government made that arrangement with the banks, and the banks have given a lot of those loans out to the small businesses. It's done to kind of allow them to be sustainable so that they don't see a lot of these businesses going under. Now, in Gambia's case, I know that there was, a lot of money announced as funds that are available to obviously rescue the whole economy and support the people. But I think the way the government has gone about it, as I said, I don't want to go political, but from a business point of view, I don't think the businesses are feeling the support. Let's put it that way. Dalaba Ecology is a member of Gambia's Bar and Restaurant Association. Is some association that just came up when COVID hit. This group of businesses decided to. Someone actually notified me of this being available, and then I registered the interest for Dalaba to join and be a part of that, because what we're trying to do there is to formulate a group that can obviously be something like a pressure group that can go and say to the government, look, we've got this many members, we've got this many staff, and a lot of them, I would say 99% of them at the moment stand a risk of losing their jobs. And there's that many families that are, depending on these individuals that are members of staff of our businesses. So as a government, what can you do to support us to be able to maintain these staffing levels? And at least if you can come up with something that can allow us to give them some continuity for, even if it's 6 months or 3 months, where their wages will be paid, they can at least come in and do something else, and this money can benefit their families. But that's something that's ongoing at the moment. And a lot of the conversations that are being held in this group, people are not very convinced that we're going to go far. And I'm unfortunately one of those people that kind of think that, yes, great initiative and great efforts that people are making, but I don't think we're going to be successful, because looking at the trend of what's happening with the Gambia government and the amount of monies that we're told have been spent, it is scary to think that, unfortunately, by the time we start to realize the full impact or assess the full impact of COVID, a lot of our small businesses, medium-sized businesses, probably would be out of business. And it's going to have a significant impact, because you look at it at the moment, these big hotels, they have got chains, they have got, trickle chains that are linked down to smaller businesses, smaller agro businesses, where they get their supplies from. So say, for example, your local vegetable gardener in Gunjur might be a supplier to a big hotel in Senegambia. So if that hotel is not in operation, obviously that vegetable gardener is not going to get that business. So these are some of the impact that people are underestimating, how businesses obviously, relate to other smaller businesses, and how we all interrelated in terms of our survivals. So I think as a government in the Gambia, there is a lot of work that they need to do for small and medium-sized businesses to avoid a situation that is going to have a major consequence in our lives in the future.
Absolutely, you're definitely right. I mean, this is something that I think needs to happen, for the fact that most of us rely on these sectors of our economy, agriculture, fisheries, and a bunch of host of different areas of our economy. The government never ever had a specific plan for businesses, to rescuing businesses. You mentioned something here that is quite interesting. That is how our businesses actually employs people. Like you mentioned, of about 20% of the Gambia's GDP is from tourism, and with an approximate employee size of 42,000 people. For
Absolutely.
me, I'm not looking at that as 42,000 individuals. I'm looking at a multiple of 42,000s,
Mhm.
because how many individual, how many people or family members rely on each
Mhm.
of these employees that works in the industry, that
This is the point.
enjoys their livelihood from it. We know
Mhm.
Gambia, we rely
Mhm.
heavily on family members.
Yeah.
Probably you have a family member of 10, we call them breadwinners, right? We fondly call them breadwinners of the family. And you have
Correct.
maybe one, two people that are on gainful employment that are required to buy bag of rice every month or every 2 weeks nowadays. Previously, it used to be every week. People would be like, okay, if I get my salary, I'm gonna buy a bag of rice, put this much for groceries, like we call them
Mhm.
fish money back home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have that going every month, but you have very few people that are on gainful employment in different families. So whatever happens or affects every single family obviously affects the entire family, the entire community. So you having that trickling down and adds to the suffocation or the struggle of that family because of a layoff by just one person from the family or just two people from the community. So that's how I look at it, that it trickles down. But I just really believe it's high time that government is engaged to understand that they should have a plan for businesses if they struggle. You see some businesses that struggles and they go out of business
Yeah.
and they file bankruptcy, right? Gambia, you don't file no bankruptcy, you just go out
No.
of business. So you
Exactly.
get literally no help from the government. What the government got to understand is that you can be a private business, but they should have a system where these businesses can be held to avoid unemployment, to also avoid people losing their jobs, to avoid crime on the streets. Because if people are not gainfully employed, what they're going to think is other ways of making money, that will, as a result, go on, people will go and steal, theft will increase, crime rate will increase, violent crime will increase, overdoses, a bunch of things. People will be more into drugs more
Mm.
and less productive. So all
Yeah.
this trickles down into our general societal well-being that
Yeah.
affects us not just as businesses, but because what is affecting us as an employee trickles down to our family, to our frustration, to our livelihood. And it's high time government understands that they should have a system to rescue businesses. They should
Mm.
have a plan, just not only to go in, I mean, buy a bunch of cars, or telling us to be putting a bunch of money on this. This should be kind of decentralized and, you know, pulling it out and throwing it into the market and helping, having a
Mm.
system that helps everyone. That's how you're going to create the
Yeah.
right environment for businesses to grow and thrive without waiting for businesses just to close. If you
Yeah.
ask the Gambian government right now how many businesses closed due to COVID, they have no damn data about it.
Yeah.
They have
And
no clue, because there's no
also,
system to monitor
yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, also there are some. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I think also there is a major issue in control of small businesses in Gambia. I mean, a lot of these businesses in Africa in general, but Gambia in particular, rely on financing from banks. And we
Right,
know this is through records we've seen a lot of these banks, how they operate in Gambia. They give you loans based on collateral security that you put down to
correct,
obviously secure the many millions that you might need to get that business to grow. So my
right,
concern at the moment is that there are a lot of very what we call successful businesses. Of course, success is very relative, and to you what is success and to somebody else might be different. But we look at a lot of our medium-term businesses, and we think they're successful businesses. They're growing, they're opening other branches, and we think they're doing very well. Little did we actually realize a lot of these businesses are relying on finances from these banks. Now, for me, it's a major concern for me, because if these businesses start to struggle, what's going to happen with the banks? Because we all know that a lot of these banks are very aggressive in terms of the way they actually ask for money back. And if you miss a payment with them, potentially that can put that business into jeopardy and into a lot of struggle. So I think this is where government can come in with legislation to control these banks in such a way that they can give these businesses some flexibility to be able to still pay, but obviously give them payment breaks and give them support that can allow the businesses to continue operations until we obviously get through this very difficult and very unprecedented times. If we allow the banks to just operate as normal, business as normal, I mean, a lot of our small businesses are going to disappear, especially the ones that are relying on funding from the banks. Because if they want their money, your business is not thriving, you're not doing anything, you're not generating money, you are not going to be able to maintain your regular payments that you're making to these banks. And if that continue, you defaulting with them, the potential are there for these banks to obviously be as aggressive as they can be, and eventually get the businesses to go under. And this is something that government need to look at now and put something in place, because otherwise 6 months down the line is when we'll have this impact, because people are going to miss 2-3 months worth of payment, and of course consequences for that would be there under the terms and conditions for these loans that you signed to. So that is a big fear for me, for those businesses that are relying on funding from the banks. So that's something that we need to look at as well.
I mean, me as a business guy, I mean, I know, I understand how resources are scarce and how this is a life and death situation where, we are preoccupied to spending money into the, health sector or different sectors. But these are all part of the business sector. They're all stakeholders in one way or the other. And just one guy who is following us before we go further, I know we don't want to go into how these monies were spent, the COVID money and all that. There's a bunch of opinions about it, and people say so much about it. We will really strictly keep it to the business area. But he mentioned something that I think that's a general feeling that you will be shocked to know how these COVID funds that were spent, and that's from Mr. Janneh. Thank you for that. And yeah, so when you look at it, you mentioned something that is very relevant. Businesses getting their funds from the financial services industry, from the banks, from the microfinances. And you'll be surprised, like some of these banks are charging you an interest on an unbelievable interest of 23%. So that's like every $100 or every $100 that you take from a bank, if you are at 23, you're paying back $123 back to the bank. Or if it is 20, 120. 1 million, how much that's gonna be? Are you making enough to repay that back or not? So there's so much to talk about. There's so much to take care of back home when it comes to businesses, so that our governments are now involved, not directly micromanaging the businesses, but also formulate ideas that are implementable and that are we able to monitor. I think you made a mention of legislations, how they can formulate those. But I'll tell you, man, some of these things are just in our books, right? They've already been there. I'm not sure this particular one is there or not. But most of the things that Gambia needs, as far as it's just a written document, is there.
Yeah.
Are they working documents? I'm not
Probably
sure.
not.
But they're not implementing it. You have people that are employed to do these things, but you only see the government being furious at businesses when they fail to pay taxes. They really don't find out what are the reasons why this XYZ business is not able to pay taxes. They're not even sure, or they don't even know if these businesses are operating at a loss. Just like a market vendor that you come to collect $5 every day from, probably the whole day they don't get any, make any sales. How in the world are you able to pay that $5 a daily $5? These are frustrations that needs to be taken care of, and these are times that it is really necessary for business people to come out and also to put pressure on the government, on our agencies that are parastatals, to really consider the plights of businesses, not as an individual owner, but as a community, as something that creates employment that would help that country to progress and flourish. So they have a stake, a high stake in that. Because if your business collapse or my business collapse, it's just not me. Sometimes you as an individual, you have enough to take care of your family. But it's just not only you. It's about the people that you create. It's about the taxes that you're going to pay if your business flourishes. So it's about time for governments to see themselves into the businesses and understand that these are partnerships, these are collaborations that they need from the businesses, and businesses also needs from them to be able to get to where they want to get to. So another topic I want us to hit on a little bit is production. Most of our stuffs are being produced outside the Gambia. And now that there is so much restriction on a lot of things, air transport is out of it, right? We heavily relying more on sea transport and road transport, things that can physically move goods, by land or by water, like ships. It takes forever to get to the Gambia. And air transport obviously is the fastest. So that means our people back home are getting goods later than it used to be. And delivery is going to be really slow. Price is going to increase because there is going to be scarcity. Um, we are not producing enough back home to supply all our needs. What are the things that you think are necessary to boost the local production so that our local businesses can transform their operations in a way that if they relied 100% or 90% previously on international production to supply their operations back home, they can reduce that to at least 50%. And even after the pandemic, how they can revolutionize these operations and productions to meet their demand for even a better pricing. Because once you produce locally, obviously things get even cheaper. They're more authentic, they're more natural and more organic.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a very interesting one, because I think as a nation, the Gambia, is one of those countries where if you look around the market to see what is produced in the country itself, the Gambia, you will be very much disappointed because a lot of the products that we use in the country are imported. I would say I wouldn't be hesitant to even guess that, to between 90 and 99% of the products that we use daily in the Gambia would have been imported, or would have been from other countries different from our country. And a lot of these is not because we don't have the ability to produce some of these products, but it's just because, unfortunately, we tend to over rely on import and creating the opportunity to produce these products ourselves. I'll give an example. There is someone that I managed to have a contact with. This guy came from the US, and he set up a small rice production, agro business in the Upper Gambia, on the banks of the river. You'll be surprised how well he's doing because he's managed to secure some funding, from one of the United Nations agencies in Gambia. And the guy is producing a lot of high quality rice in Gambia today. And people would agree that, this was a project that the Gambia previous government had from what we call the Jahal Pacha rice production project. This was a very, very successful government project in the Jawara era. But of course, it declined over time, and eventually operations were ceased. And in fact, I think this government is trying to revitalize those operations, which is a good move, because as a nation, we need to start producing stuff, especially our basic staple food, which for the Gambia, rice is our staple food. So if we can be self-sufficient in rice production, then that would be a big bonus for Gambia, and it can create a lot of employment opportunities for the locals as well. So going from that, we can even re-export or starting to even export a lot of rice to our neighboring countries, around West Africa, because we are lucky to be positioned in the part of the world where, we have a river that's got about 70% of the water in there being fresh water. I mean, we're really lucky as a nation for that. If the Gambia was some Chinese country, today there would be no importation of rice in Gambia, because all of our fresh water accesses along the banks of the River Gambia would have been, and the land is fertile. It would have been used for rice production for many decades. And then we would not be talking about a situation where sometimes, there is semi-rice shortages in the country where prices can hike. I remember now, if you want to buy a bag of rice in Gambia, it's costing you, if you want quality rice, you're talking about nearly $2,000 to be able to get a better rice. So there are a lot more other things that, Gambians need to think about. There are business people or Gambian, entrepreneurs now that are coming back. I mean, there's another American guy, I think I mentioned that to you, who is doing agro business in production of, pawpaws, papayas, and, other different fruits that they're producing in Gambia. So we can do this. It is possible. It's not that we cannot do it. But it depends on the type of leadership that we have in that country. Because if we don't have the right type of leadership in the country to encourage people to invest and even support investors and encourage them not to go through a lot of this bureaucracy that is absolutely mental, and this tax issue that you're talking about, because, for our governments in Gambia, all their interest is on taxation. Whether you are a business that is employing a lot of Gambians, they don't care. All they care about is just collecting tax from you. So whether you're making profit or not making profit, and this is going to be a problem now, because with the COVID hitting now, a lot of these businesses have ceased operation. And the government is saying now we have a curfew in place. A lot of these businesses won't be able to even operate in the night. So now, if they cannot operate in the night, then there'll be no business for them. For example, in the hospitality industry, we know from experience that a lot of people would want to go out in the night to go and entertain themselves. I understand the reasoning behind it because of the high situation or the huge numbers of COVID numbers that are coming out from that country, and that's the reason why the government had to take these measures. But of course, every measure that you take, you need to counter that with something that can have an impact on the local businesses that are going to be hit by your decision that you're making. So the frustration for businesses in Gambia right now, which is going to see a lot of smaller, medium to, probably even bigger businesses going under. And I'm 100% this is something short, is something that's going to happen over the course of time in the next year or so. We will see a lot of businesses closing down because they can't sustain themselves. So for us to be able to address these needs, as businesses, I think we need to start thinking outside the boxes. So, for example, I'm in the hospitality business. That's my core business. That's the area that I'm operating in. So I need to think out of my core and come up with something else that I can do that can sustain me over this period of time. Would that require that I incorporate some agro business into my business, allowing sustainability to happen? I mean, these are decisions that I have to be making myself. But then, not every business in the position similar to my position, because some other businesses might not even have the land space to be able to do this agro business because they are operating within a very limited area. So that's difficult decision for them, I understand. But I think innovation have to come in. We have to be creative as businesses. This is time of creativity because this is it's not something that we have ever experienced as businesses. It's not something that you can plan for, and of course, this would mean if we're able to get through this difficult period by innovation and creativity, coming up with new ideas, doing things differently until we are out of this. That will allow our businesses to be resilient and be prepared for any future eventualities that might be similar to COVID or even different from COVID, or give or pose this kind of threat to businesses in terms of their sustenance. So it is a time difficult for everyone, of course. That is true. We all know that. But then what do you do in these difficult circumstances? And this is the challenge that we all have as a business. For me, at Dalaba Ecolodge, we are operating, in a different way because our staff, as I said before, we're a small business. I treat them as a family, so I don't want to lay anyone off. So we're still, working as normal. There's no operations on there that would say we're taking business from outside. So we try to allow our staff to do other work within the business in there that would allow them to spend their time meaningfully and whilst they're getting their earnings from it as well. So that's how we're getting around it. But I think innovation, creativity, flexibility, and do something different from what you're doing. I'll give you an example of a tailor in Gunjur. This tailor knew that he had to do something different, but there's a demand somewhere else. Of course, COVID nobody likes, but he knew people need these face masks. So he turned his business around producing a certain amount of face masks a day, and he's got like a big table in front of his tailoring workshop where he's selling them. And they're going like fast bread. That people are buying them in numbers. And that's innovation, and this is what we're talking about. It's creativity. So everyone needs to do something different that can allow you to survive, because at the moment is I hate to say it, survival of the fittest, but everyone is just basically trying to survive to keep their heads above the water, and that's the difficult challenge for the business. Unfortunately, our government is not there to support. So it's a very, very difficult position for small businesses in Gambia at the moment. It is.
You just mentioning that creativity, it just reminds me of a system. Sekou Toure, my brother's friend, good friend. I'm not sure he lives around your area in Gunjur. So back in the day when people go to the nightclub at Abubacarr Jammeh's place, what happened was he would there was this bakery that produces bread. It's ready around the time. Yeah, Tapalava. It is ready around the time like 3, 4, 5 a.m. and they're ready to go and supply these local stores so it can be available to them first thing in the morning for the breakfast. And what he used to do was, because people from the nightclub, we go to this bakery at Fulakunda, just the opposite there, Bojankunda, and so he would just go and buy a big tin of butter. Those frying butters, those yellow ones, I don't see them anymore. He would just buy. He would not go to the club, right? He would buy that late at night, early in the morning. Just go and sit at the door of that bakery. When you buy your bread, you give him some money to rub some butter for your bread. I think that's fascinating. I can still remember that. That's probably like 25 years ago. But I mean, it's just so cool just to see people, just creating stuff out of nowhere, especially at this time. Whoever knew most of the bigger corporations can be operating from the bedrooms of their employees. But because the system hits, the businesses didn't succumb to that. Some of them, obviously, some were on the line, some collapsed, But you have a lot of businesses that are also doing things differently, and now the work environment is never going to be the same. Most
No.
of the businesses are planning to go remote. I've been
Yeah.
working from
Yeah.
my bedroom for five
Same here.
months, 6 months now,
I
and
tell you,
that's gonna
same here.
yeah, that's gonna remain for the rest of the year. Just whoever thought that was possible. But when things happen, like you mentioned, it's about leadership. It's about how you respond to those things, how open you are to the ideas of experts or people who have good ideas in these areas, to be able to work things together so that people are not laid off. I mean, kudos to you for allowing your staff and being innovative with your staff to just get them to be involved in doing other things rather than doing their personal duty, I mean, primary duties that they used to do on a daily basis back there. But also that humanitarian aspect of you just tells you, listen, I can't kick these people out to go back to their families. You could have closed it down and it doesn't worth the risk. But
Yeah.
I mean, business owners like you obviously needs recognition on that area. What you mentioned about how if Gambia having the river Gambia, which is largely fresh water, Gambia should never be crying for even water. Moreover, water that we will have to use for irrigation. That should be something. Listen, Gambia is
No.
two or a little bit over 2 million, right? That you can develop or put a correct foundation with proper leadership,
Yeah.
proper foundation in 5 years. Yes, it is possible. And things can pick up from there. We just have to stay away from the politics of sentiments and politics of insults, politics of personal attacks, and just be engaged and be truthful to what really is going to take Gambia forward. For
Yeah.
people to understand that you need to put knowledgeable people who can take those ministries to a higher level, not like putting an engineer in charge of a business sector,
Yeah.
not putting an army personnel, I mean, as a communication minister, what the heck are they going to do there? Nothing,
Yeah.
right? So
Abubakar,
you cannot,
it's sorry to interrupt you there. Just before
you're fine. Go ahead.
before you go over that point there, I mean, we were talking about the agri sector. It's not just the agri sector. I mean, the Gambia
Mhm.
today, they all crying because they're not having, sustainable supply of electricity. It's mental for me. My job here in the UK, I work in the utility sector, and I am fortunate to be doing work, or obviously working in the renewable sector of our business. That's where I work. So obviously we deal with renewable systems like solar panels, your wind turbines, and how this country in the United Kingdoms, of course, here in the UK where the weather is not great, they don't get a lot of sunlight. You only get it in, probably if you're lucky, 3 months of the year, proper sun energy. You know, in the Gambia, there's abundance of
Yeah.
that resource in there, natural, it's available. So it frustrates me. I don't understand how, as a nation, from independence to now, we're still struggling to put lights up in that country. That is so
I
frustrating for
mean,
me.
I've,
It,
it's just not only light, even water. Me and Haruna Drame of Paradise FM, I mean TV, we were talking about this, how frustrating it is not to even have water. I mean, come on. Water for 55 years of
yeah,
independence?
yeah,
Who are you going to blame for that?
yeah, yeah,
Nobody. We got to blame ourselves and the failure of leadership from 55 years till
yeah,
today. You can't tell me in 55 years you don't have water supplies. You can't
yeah,
tell me you can build, I mean, 3 stories and the second floor and the third floor doesn't have it when we have enough water, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
was fortunate enough to travel extensively in Asia. I've seen countries like Singapore that got independence with us. Like we go there to hustle. I've seen places like Taiwan just 30, 40 years ago, they were almost non-existent
Yeah.
economically.
Yeah.
Now these are countries that host companies that are producing and manufacturing about how many percent, a higher percentage of iPhone stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you go there, you go to Asian countries, and you will be surprised that some countries doesn't even use the underground water to do anything. They catch water, I mean rainwater,
Yeah. Yeah.
create. I visited a place that created almost a city of water, like where they treat water. So whatever comes from the sky in form of rain is
Uh, uh,
being, you know,
Abubacarr, the
channeled
water,
towards somewhere and being treated, and
the
they reuse that for people to drink
wa-
water.
You see,
Uh,
when I move over to Wales here, the first visit that I've done just to obviously open my eyes up, I went to a reservoir. It's just around the corner from us here. It's not far, about maybe 10, 15 miles. You're down there. You look at this. It's just it's like a lake in there. It's
mhm.
natural, and there's water that's been flowing from the top of the mountains in Wales here in from different directions, and this is all going to this reservoir. This reservoir is a source of drinking water
Right.
for the Welsh valleys here, right into the south of England. They get their water from here, and this water
Right.
is fresh water. It's just rainwater, but they put it into a reservoir, and they got water treatment plant in there that gets water from the reservoir into the treatment plant, and it's connected on the pipes to supply to the houses, and that's what we drink here. So I just don't understand our country. It is so frustrating sometimes to just kind of get your head around it. I mentioned slightly about the solar panel scenario. In the UK here, what they do, they've got a scheme. It's called the feed-in tariff scheme. So
Hmm.
what the government has done, it encouraged people here to invest into buying solar panels and put them on their roofs. So when you put this over to your roof space, they generate electricity. So
Hmm.
the solar panels are connected to the national grid, so the electric that you're generating goes through to your own domestic consumption in your property. You use that electric yourself. But any surplus that you generate that you don't use or don't need goes automatically to the grid. So somebody from or living in London can use electricity produced by me in South Wales. And what do you do with that? They have meters attached onto these systems. These meters just record generation of electricity that these systems are doing. So every 3 months, you just contact your energy supplier and give them a meter reading from the units that your systems generate, and they get money back from that. So imagine if we launch a scheme like that in Gambia. Number one, it's going to be very, very good for wealth creation because it's going to allow people to be able to recover their costs for installing these systems, but it's also going to give them the opportunity to be able to use energy that they all generating themselves. And it's also going to benefit the grid because the electric is going to go onto the pylons, and somebody in Banjul would use electricity that I am producing in Gunjur. So it's all about creating wealth. I think sometimes when it comes to African context, we lost track of wealth creation because wealth creation would give you a lot of opportunities, and a lot of opportunities could be job creation and income creation. This is a sustainable way of creating that wealth in there as well. But as a country, as you said before, I think our struggles are we put people in positions that they haven't got a clue about, and of course, you don't expect to get the results that you need because they will give you a different result. And this is the failures that we've seen, happening in Gambia from independence to now. Because we shouldn't be operating on those old machines that they operate in there. Gambia should all be operating on solar energy. That is the cheapest way, and it's the most sustainable way as a nation for us to grow. You know, because we cannot grow these businesses that we're trying to build. They cannot grow, they cannot develop, they cannot go anywhere without having sustainable source of energy. If this power off and power ons are happening every single day in Gambia still, it's crazy. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I just think it's just love of country. If anybody has have a question about the patriotism of a Gambian, you probably must be dreaming. For the fact that with all that, Gambians are still struggling to operate businesses. They are finding ways to sustain those businesses. People like you, myself, everyone living abroad still think of Gambia to a level we have to host a program, a business program, so that we can still trickle down the information or the knowledge or skills to the folks on the ground. Nobody gives up. So, like me and you were talking about this yesterday, how naturally every Gambian tries to do something back home. Like the
Yeah.
first day you got out of Gambia, all you start thinking was like, how can I make life better for people back home and myself in case I go back? Or even if I don't go back, how can I do this? With all this for 55 years, people struggle. One of the guests, Haruna, like last time I told you, we were talking about how now people are even individuals investing on wind turbines. And I went to Netherlands, 2016, and I couldn't just believe how all those big farmlands, the big wind turbines that you have everywhere, and how they've been relying on those for many, many, many years. You have Gambia with fresh water, with probably almost 24 hours of sunshine, and you come on, fertile soil that
Yeah.
whatever you put in there will just germinate and grow. And it's still propaganda, like from our officials all the time. It is high time people really try to work towards a system that will be there for our kids and our grandkids, not the system that was there before my dad and during my dad, and now I have to sit here and talk about having water, that we
Yeah.
have to sit here and talk about having energy. That money
Yeah.
that you're spending exorbitant amount of money to keep your business running on a
Mm.
generator or on your privately owned solar, that could have been put into something that could
Yeah.
advance that business, which in
Yeah.
turn will buy products from local producers. It will employ people, money will trickle down to their families, their livelihoods will improve, taxes will be paid on time. Government should be able to use those taxes in our interest,
Yeah.
not putting those taxes to tell me you're building a road for billions or millions of dollars on grants or on loans and all that we keep servicing for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
It's about time businesses come together and also individually take stands and be involved in how our businesses, I mean, how our country is being run. Not just to
Yeah.
be paying taxes, but to have voice, to be on the table
Yeah.
where things are being discussed,
Yeah.
right? In the government, the only business guy you will see is the finance minister most
Yeah.
of the time.
Well, even the
Finance
finance.
ministers are just mainly focused on if you debit and credit, right?
Accountant.
Import and export, balancing books and just make that's just that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That is just that. That guy is not going to be there to give you a strategy, a national strategy that is going to improve the livelihoods of the people. That is going to create an environment that works for businesses, that promotes and support businesses, that makes the bureaucracy crumble, and the things should go on a standard format where if I want to go and register a business, I'll just take the right channel, right?
Yeah.
If I want to open an account from when I'm here, I can just do it easily. If I
Yeah.
want to send money back home in the Gambia, there is a system that I can send money back home for
Hmm.
businesses, right?
Absolutely.
You have to create that.
Yeah.
It's time, business people, go ahead, support the campaigns, right?
Hmm.
Support campaigns and tell them this is what we want,
Yeah.
right? Support campaigns that you are not married to, but campaigns that they have your interest at heart, but not just
Hmm.
saying it. Let them tell you, right? This is what we have. How many campaigns when you said, oh, to promote business is what you want to do, right? They can tell you, but how many of them implements them when they come?
Yeah. Well, I think it's about time for the Gambian people in general, not just the business community, but every Gambian now needs to be watching very carefully because we have an opportunity here, 2021. So I think Gambians need to look into political manifestos and be serious about put your votes into political parties that are going to deliver on their promises, because we can't be having politicians coming back after giving promises to us, and not delivering on them, coming back to us
Correct.
to say, do you know what, this is just political campaign. That's not serious anymore. I think Gambians need to start taking themselves
Well,
serious, because if people are able to come to you and put a piece of information together to say, this is what I'm going to deliver on if you give me the opportunity of political office, and they get this opportunity, and down the line they come back to your face and say, look, that's just political campaign. That is child's play. And I think Gambians are better than that. We need to start being conscious and also being prepared to look at political manifestos and vote people on who are going to deliver. It's
and
gone beyond
and
that now.
and
Civic independence.
by extension, not even just stopping at just not stopping at telling us your platform what you want to do for us, right? I think that there should be this question of how. How are you going to do this? Right? They will always come and say, I'm gonna build this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna create this environment for you and all that. But how are they gonna do it? They never tell you, right? You
Yeah,
should be able to, as a campaign, to know where Gambia gets money from,
yeah,
how much amount of billions or millions of dollars Gambia owe to other organizations outside, how much money Gambia is receiving as a revenue within the country. You should be able to know. We have to act serious. Like, we have to have professionals working in these sectors in our campaigns that are hired and they're doing all this analysis, because you should be able to convince me, to tell
yeah,
me where you're going to get money from if you promise me to build a swimming pool for me. Where are you going to get that money,
yeah.
right? So how are you
Abubakar,
going to pay for that? There
I
should
think the
be a question of how are you going to
how,
do that.
yeah, I think the
And we would go
problem,
farther than that so that we can be more, at least 50% confident to say, okay, he has a plan, right? You stick
yeah,
to that plan, you deliver. Next time we consider you, we come back and go back to the drawing board and say, this is what you did right. This is what
yeah.
you did not. What are you doing to improve on that? But just not to tell me that you can write strategies on a paper and give it to me and you expect me to. 55 years, they never did,
Yeah.
right?
No, but I think the problem that we have with that is because our political leaders and politicians in Gambia, and they having it too easy. I mean, so imagine somebody just, taken up by a political party and being, appointed as a candidate for, or put up as a candidate to represent that political party. The screening process and everything that they go through is just limited to that political party. There's no debates going on. There's no public debates. There are no public conversations where people can confront these people and ask them genuine questions to try to squeeze them and put them in the corner and see their resilience and how good they are to defend the policy that they said they're going to implement. And as you're saying, ask them those tough questions about where the money is going to come from and how they're going to use that money itself. We're not doing this in Gambia. And this is why when you had that program with Haruna, I was
Right.
delighted that, I put that question to him as to
Hmm.
whether they're going to try and push political leaders to come onto live political and public debate where they can come out and sell to the
Hmm.
Gambians their political agenda, because that would give the people the opportunity to throw questions at them and see how they react to these questions, and that can give us a little bit of a scrutiny to have an opportunity to look at somebody and kind of make a decision on the basis that this person will be able to deal with this political responsibility when he's given one. But a lot of these people, they get selected by their own political parties. They get thrown at the people. So of course, the scrutiny itself by the people is not there. So when you give them a political opportunity and they happen to have the office, then the problems come in because they are not even capable of dealing with the issues at hand. So these are the problems that we are having in terms of our political front. But that's something for the politicians to deal with. But we need to
Yeah,
actually encourage our
have a
media
share on
houses
that. Mhm.
to demand this to happen.
Right.
So that's why the likes of Haruna and other media houses, they need to put a cooperation together and demand that this need to happen through the IEC, that this elections that are forthcoming, that we need to have a political debate where we can have these politicians scrutinized by the public. And I think it's gonna help our political discourse significantly going forward. But in terms of the businesses, just to wrap that little bit over for you, what I have seen, business development and growth, um, energy is very, very significant in any country's development in business.
Right.
So you need to have 24 hours electricity. Gambia is still struggling with having 24 hours sustainable electricity in the country. That is
Right.
disastrous. But like I'm saying here, I think they need to talk to people who have understanding of renewable energy. Because for me, the old generator systems that they're using, these are outdated. People don't use that anymore. They don't. They don't give, in here, in the UK, for example, 50% of UK's energy comes from renewable sources. And you look
Right.
at the sources, that could be tidal wave systems that are generating electricity. Gambia have the potentials to do that on the river. And then we have got potentials for wind turbines. We've got that.
Mhm.
In the UK here, if you go to the Scottish Highlands, that's where the bulk of the wind turbines are. And they are generating huge amount of electricity. Huge amount of electricity. So if you look at the money that we pay those customers, because they all tie onto this scheme called feed-in tariff. So the UK government created that scheme, and when that happened, a lot of the farmers here in this country have turned their farms into, to solar farms, if you like.
Right.
The space that they got in their farm, significant amount of that has been turned into wind turbines and, of course, solar panels. And they are making a lot more money from that. And that comes to our point of business resilience and also, changing your source of income. So where these farmers originally they produce lamb, say they got a lot of cattle in there and a lot of sheep farming and stuff like that. But they see the opportunity that the government is doing a scheme that allows you to feed electricity back to the grid, and you get paid for that. A lot of them went to the banks, took money, and invested on their fields, and they installed thousands of solar panels on their fields. If you're traveling in the country and you see a lot of the solar panels that these people have got in their farms, it's incredible. So that is giving them a sustainable income for 25 years, because these schemes were originally set up for 25 years. When you sign up to one for 25 years, as long as you're generating, they will be paying you that money. So that's
Right.
25 years worth of money. However much the initial cost or the outlay has been for you, maximum 6-7 years down the line, you would have finished paying your outlay. So 7 years from there to the rest of the 25 years, that's your profit. That's money that you can earn and invest into something else. So it kind of makes me crazy when I think about it, and I'm still seeing our
And
country
just also
struggling.
even just considering our size
Exactly.
and that we cannot do it, it's heart-wrenching. So I know we a little bit over we on top of the hour a little bit, but yeah, your last one would be, I mean, we can talk about this for 2 or 3 hours, right?
I know, I
But
know.
yeah, what is the way forward for businesses, especially back home? Just before we wrap up, I would just have, just as a closing remark, what's the way forward? Like people will be like, okay, you said a lot of ideas here, you know, made a lot of complaints, a lot of opinions, and a lot of tips, obviously, how people can try to survive and make their businesses still work. You mentioned about how they can be innovative to do things that they were not doing before, how they can also change the production to being local and the things that they can consider doing and the different things that you said over the course of the hour and during the course of the hour. What is the way forward that a business that is sitting there and scared that they might go out of business, or someone, my brother, sister, or cousin sitting there and like, oh, I am employed by this particular business. They're going out of business, or they're about to go out of business, because not every business is doing what you're just doing. That is to keep your staff and just engage them in certain things. That's a very, very rare move that a lot of businesses done because they don't want to lose money primarily, and they always want to get it. What's the way forward? Just as our closing
Um,
remark.
yeah, so thank you very much for the opportunity to obviously address that way forward for small and medium businesses. I think this is where now we all need to look at options. So, for example, if you're a small business, you're operating, you need to look at another opportunity that will create you income. So for example, if you are a business in my industry, which is the hospitality industry, um, take the COVID out, because of course we're expecting that COVID is going to be dealt with at some point. So hopefully, early part of the next year, we might see that there might be, some form of medication for it or something along those lines. So for these businesses, I think we need to look at flexibility. And that flexibility, in that, what I mean, if you're operating in the hospitality industry, I mean, we don't need to just look at the tourists that are coming from abroad. We need to start looking at inward now, inward tourism, looking at opportunities from, West African tourism, Gambian tourism, Senegalese tourism. There are a lot of opportunities in there. Now, we had a guest that came to our place, and this person wanted to explore. They're just basically a family that wanted to see what is happening around the local areas of Gunjur. And, we gave them local visits to our vegetable gardens, and we gave them the opportunity to go and do a total monitoring program on the source of GunjurBIZ, where they were lucky to find 140 eggs of sea turtles. So these were very exciting for that family, and they're going to come back again. So businesses need to be very flexible now. This is the time to go outside of the normal core business practices for yourself, do something different that's going to create you that income. So as I've given you on the example of that tailor there, they managed to do something different and they're making money from that. So I think this responsibility also have to be extended to the government. They should look into the option of providing tax breaks for these businesses to allow them to afloat for the next perhaps a year or so, and support packages to allow staff wages to be paid for a period of time through economic stimulus programs that the government can put in place. They are able to do that because they've got the money to be able to do it. So I think, those are some of the few things that we can do in this very difficult time, because flexibility would play a key role for any business now. If you just want to concentrate on what you normally do, these are not normal times. So we all need to remember that. These are very abnormal times. So abnormal times call for, abnormal solutions. So you need to come up with something that's very different to what you normally do to be able to sustain and survive this difficult period. But I think businesses need to look at growth plans as well, and perhaps suspend some of their activities to focus on
Right.
sustenance of the business, because it's very difficult and nobody knows when this COVID is going to go. We're all hoping that very soon it'll go away, but very soon can be extended to being an year or even longer than that. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue doing the same things that you do now? That would put you into more trouble. So other opportunities would be to approach your, financier, if you've got one, and be genuine and have these conversations with them about your struggles. And perhaps they can come up with a flexibility to allow you to make alternative arrangements for your repayments to them. And this can help other businesses. I know for myself, I'm lucky to have not been in that position where, there are no debts in my business, so the debt is all owed to me. So for me, that is a luxurious position to be in.
Right.
But for other businesses that are not in that kind of position, I think if you approach your business financier, be honest with them, talk about your struggles. These are things that I am sure some financiers might look at and perhaps give you, a repayment break and things along those lines. But flexibility for me, is the key thing here, and innovation. So obviously you need to be very creative, come up with new ideas, and this can be outside the normal practice for that business. So I don't want to just limit it to the hospitality industry, because I'm talking a lot about that, because that's my business area. But
Right.
other areas or other smaller businesses as well. For example, if you're a petrol station, and you've got huge debt that's on your neck with the bank, approach the bank now. Talk to them about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't leave it until 6 months down the line when you might be struggling. Because
Right.
if the taxi companies are not doing their taxi business, they're not going to buy petrol. So the knock-on effect is there for everyone to see. So your struggle is not just your struggle. Your struggle would impact somebody else, and that would impact somebody else. So that's how all these businesses are interconnected. So I think that being the case at the moment, because our government is not coming with a solution, the only solution that we can put in place is to find that additional income that's going to come in to sustain the business. So if that means you're going to do something differently, that's going to bring that income, then you need to do that to survive. Because it's, as I said, it's unfortunately survival of the fittest at the moment. That's what it is for Gambia, because the
Right.
government that we should be relying on for support are not forthcoming. So
Right.
unfortunately, very difficult, sad times for small businesses in Gambia.
Hey, brother Lamin Kere Janneh, thanks so much. And I always glad that you were able to create time for us and come and exchange these amazing ideas. Like, it's just like I'm back to school all over again. Like, some of these things are things that you can never learn from school, right? These are things that are built along the line, and as the experience, as you grow older and get into business and went through so much to be able to think this way and also giving tips. I mean, you mentioned great stuff here that, especially when you mentioned that let the business not sit, especially if you have certain things to take care of with a bank, go and approach them, make a deal with them and stuff like that. They should be able to work with you and hopefully until before everything collapses, before you start going there.
Absolutely.
So that's it for us today, and
Thank you.
I am so thrilled. Thanks so much for spending your Saturday with us.
Thank you.
It's been over an hour, and we appreciate your time for coming up here. And you folks out there that are watching, it's our Saturday GunjurBIZ show. We continue to bring people that will give you an insight on how businesses are operated and how we can leverage some of the things that we have locally to be able to continue operating and also continue to employ our employees so that they can live a more dignified life. And each Saturday we will come here to bring in, people in these areas and discuss things that we believe one or two things can be picked up by somebody that whose life it can change. And we also do this to make sure that and believe hope with a hope that, these folks will be a role model to younger generation of potential business owners in the future. And don't forget, you can just go and watch this video one more time. So many tips. He mentioned about sustainability, solar, fresh water, I mean, electricity, energy, water, how to leverage on local production and how to think outside the box. And not even only thinking outside the box, but he mentioned things here that I consider as going to make your own box, right? So that you can be in a business or you can sustain it. So thanks so much. Follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe. Hit the subscription channel button on Gunjur News Online and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gunjur Online. You will find us there. and just subscribe and share the videos, and hopefully it can just change someone's life out there. So that is it for us today from GunjurBIZ, and my name is Abubacarr Jammeh. I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you.
Blessed with the mighty Atlantic Ocean, fertile agricultural lands, and a strategic geographic location that gives an opportunity for a lot of people to explore and get into the business. Gunjur and the Gambia at large has experienced numerous shutdowns when it comes to economy, and especially this COVID time. Please join us as we embark on a journey where we explore different areas of our business sector, from agriculture, fisheries, and small business enterprises. GunjurBIZ is in short called GunjurBIZ. This will be a platform that we will use to explore different business opportunities, especially for young people. We'll bring you on Gunjur Online all the business topics that is related to financing, operations, marketing. And we will use this platform to invite experts from different sectors of the Gambian economy and give tips and have a broader analysis of the general business sector. This will give us an opportunity to be able to discuss in a broader detail how businesses are affected when it comes to our environment, our natural resources being exploited by other people, but also how we can tap into the opportunities and also access capital, which is very crucial for the success of the businesses. But not only that, we won't stop at accessing capital. You know what else we're going to do? It's about the little operational processes that are needed in our business culture to build up cultures that's going to be successful. And that's going to be, most importantly, what? It's going to be sustainable for the success of the business. So we can transfer wealth. We can also transfer skills from one person to another to be able to live in a community that is thriving, a community that businesses, private sector, individual businesses nurture entrepreneurship and reward them. So please join me every week on Gunjur Online as we delve into all these areas of discussions when it comes to business success. This is your host, Abubacarr of Gunjur Online. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you.
Here are 5 ways you can help combat stigma and discrimination as we fight against coronavirus COVID-19. 1. Educate your friends and family that COVID-19 is not specific to any race, nationality, or skin color. 2. Do not associate migrants with the virus. In many contexts, migrants are healthy and key players in nation building. 3. Remind others that discrimination may lead people to hide their symptoms rather than seek treatment. This puts everyone else at risk. 4. Be kind, considerate, and helpful to others in these difficult times. 5. If you know anyone experiencing symptoms, encourage them to dial 1025 for free.